Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're all amazing and you've had an excellent weekend. Welcome to another installment of Monday Q&A, where I do my best to answer all your spicy questions. If you have a question for next week's Q&A, put it in the comment section below. Put a question mark at the end of it as well, because I might miss it otherwise. There's a filter in YouTube Studio which lets you filter out comments that have questions in them. So it's way easier for me if you just put a question mark at the end of anything. Of course, I totally expect people to just put a question mark at the end of any comment, so I will see it. So this may be a double-edged sword. Nevertheless, if you'd like me to answer your question, feel free to ask anything you like. Pop it in the comment section below. And a reminder that Ragdoll put out some new music last Friday in case you haven't seen it. The song's called Sky's Limit. You might like it if you like the guitar noises that I make here on the channel. I will be in Melbourne on Friday playing a show with Ragdoll at the Prince Band Room. We're playing with our good mates Sisters Doll, who are a fantastic band as well, coming out of the little town of Collie here in Western Australia. They currently reside in Melbourne, but if you like your old school rock and roll, you'll absolutely love them. And then we make a bunch of loud, angry noises as well. Looking forward to catching up with a bunch of you at the show in Melbourne. And I love Melbourne. It's just such a great place to play and hang out. Other than that, a quick word from today's sponsor, and then I will answer some of your questions. This video is brought to you by Perth's favourite power trio, Ragdoll, and their new exciting single, Sky's Limit. Available everywhere you buy your music. You can probably also find it on some torrent sites as well if you're too cheap to spend $1 on. The best headphones for use with your amp modeler or studio setup. I'll show you what I use. I wouldn't necessarily say they're the best, but they've been totally fine over the last 7 or 8 years that I've had them. These are just some Audio Technicas. I think they are the ATH50X models. You know, they say Audio Technica on the top. They're pretty comfortable. They expand, so I can put them on my big melon head, and you know, they have a little plug here, which I kind of like. So if you want to store them, you can take the cable out. The thing that I don't love about them is that, you know, if you kind of lose this tiny little plug, then don't have a lot laying around. It's a little bit inconvenient, but yeah, I've had these for quite a long time now. I wouldn't necessarily trust them to mix on or anything like that, but they're quite a pleasant headphone to use. In terms of the best, I have so little experience that I couldn't tell you there. Headphones are a very personal thing, much like monitoring in general. So my advice, as always, if you've got the ability to go into a music store where you can try out a bunch of different headphones, I would highly recommend it. I did a kind of Q&A session, you know, talk. It was kind of like the Leon TED talk, just talking about my main influences at the start of the year here at Addicted to Audio in Perth. And they had such an amazing setup. Like, been so long since I had gone into a dedicated, I don't even want to call it hi-fi because that undersells it, but they had dedicated listening environments. They had headphones from, you know, the kind of cheaper end like these to really, really expensive ones. So if you've got a store like that where you live, it's well worth paying them a visit, being nice to them, and trying out a bunch of things with your favorite gear. I'm sure some of them would even let you take your modeling rig in to play around with it, but don't take my word for that one. So yeah, these have been totally fine. You see them on my live streams or anytime I'm using headphones. So I'll put a little affiliate link in the video description. As always with affiliate links, you don't have to follow them, but if you do follow them and buy something, my channel gets a very small percentage as a kickback, so you kind of help keep the lights on and keep the cats fed here. Speaking of best or favorites or whatever you want to call it, my preference maybe is a better way to say it when it comes to guitar straps. Do I prefer leather or nylon? It's a good question. I don't really have too strong a preference. At the moment on most of my guitars, I'm actually using this denim strap from Bare Bones Straps here in Australia. I'll put a link to their website in the video description. This one fits my, you know, any color you like, as long as it's black aesthetic that I generally have going on, you know, black t-shirt, black jeans strap. So yeah, these are really, really nice. They sent me a really funky colored one as well that I've been using with my acoustic guitar. I do have some of the Damasio clip lock straps. You've probably seen them on my main PRS. I kind of like those because they don't get caught on anything. So if you're playing live and you want to move the guitar neck around for that all-important neck shaky vibrato, you can do that. I do tend to like a slightly wider strap in general. I mean, this is thin-ish. I wouldn't say it's as thin as I have seen, but I've also got some handmade leather straps that are a bit thicker. Of course, you can go and watch like those John Sykes videos from the late 80s and early 90s where it looks like his strap is about this wide, like a true Conan the Barbarian strap. So in general, you want to distribute, the mass across your shoulder as evenly as possible. So I guess having a nice wide strap would work. Also, not having it get stuck is pretty important as well. Kind of like the headphones thing, it really comes down to personal preference. I'm not that picky as long as it doesn't feel like, I've got a piece of rope digging into my shoulder. I'll probably be fine. Thank you to everybody who's been enjoying the gear podcast as well that I've been doing with my good friend Troy Nababan. We've had some pretty awesome guests on so far, and we've got some awesome guests coming up. Any other gear podcasts I would recommend to all of you out there? The main one, of course, if you're watching this channel and you're not aware of this, is Tone Talk, Dave Friedman and Mark Hazansky. Mark, I really hope I pronounce your last name correctly there. That's the one, that is the standard by which all others should be measured. Pretty awesome, the number of guests they've had on there and the banter and the tangents that they go into. I really like Stephen Fryette's live streams as well. The malcontents, if you want to call it a podcast or a live stream, or Steve just sipping some martinis and having a good time, then whatever, but it's amazing. Both Steve and Dave know so much about amps. Another one, go and subscribe to Headfirst Amplification. Jason Tong does a lot of live streams on there and is another deep reservoir of knowledge. In terms of gear podcasts, that's literally about it. I'm kind of the worst person to talk to. I've got my own gear podcast with one of my friends now, but I don't really check out, say, the competition, because I don't think it's a competition. I think it's just another way, another format to talk about stuff that we like. I really like the kind of open format of it and being able to talk about things that I necessarily wouldn't be able to cover in like a standard gear review. So I do like that, and telling stories about touring and unrelated things on there. So if you haven't checked it out, by all means go and check it out. But most of the podcasts that I listen to are probably history podcasts these days. So yeah, when it comes to guitar gear, I think I talk about it enough that it's not necessarily something I want to spend all my time doing, but Tone Talk is definitely the one. But feel free to pump up any gear podcasts that you like in the comment section below. The Guitar Hour podcast is another one that I like as well. Tom Quayle and Jake Wilson and David Beebe. Very cool. Not necessarily gear-centric. They do a lot of other things, but I do enjoy when they talk about gear. Any Brazilian rock or metal bands that I like or am even aware of, you obviously can't talk about Brazilian rock or metal without talking about Sepultura. I still remember hearing Roots for the first time, and it was in that era of listening to anything that was heavier than Megadeth being totally terrifying, and this is obviously death metal, right? So yeah, I still remember hearing that absolutely pumping through like a kind of hotted up little Nissan or something like that with a sub that was way too big for the car, and that rearranging my brain. The other big one for me is obviously Angra, and it's super cool now that Kiko is in Megadeth, but Angra have so much great music out, and I really got into power metal when I was about 15 or 16, so Stradivarius and Hammerfall, and basically anything that had double kick drums and really fast guitars, and then discovering this band from South America called Angra with this amazing guitar player. So that's probably the main two. I don't think they're from Brazil, but I remember on the old Rock Detector website checking out a band called Rata Blanca. I think they might be from Mexico. I may be mistaken there. I should have checked my notes before I did this, but they're almost like the Latin American Deep Purple or something like that. They have some great stuff. But this is when I get all of you to recommend me some music from the non-English speaking part of the Americas, like stuff that's not from the USA or Canada. It's a pretty massive continent or pair of continents, so I would love to check out some new music from there, whether it's rock, metal, dream pop, indie, anything like that. Let me know in the comments. And I'm always blown away when I check my YouTube metrics and see how many people do listen in from South and Central America. I massively appreciate it, and it is one part of the world I cannot wait to visit one day. This one comes from friend of the channel, Tim, have I ever seen a doogie snake? Tim, I think what you're referencing is the dugite. They are probably the most common snake in the part of Australia that I live in. They generally just kind of keep to themselves, but they're very, very well known for just like finding their way randomly into your house. So, just out of shot is a door that goes into the garage. And a few years ago, we used to keep our cat's litter box in there, and there was a dugite that had just kind of wrapped itself around the litter box. There was another one last year that was in the backyard, and basically every suburb in Perth at least has a resident person that you call who's the local snake catcher. And the lady who came out, it's the most Australian thing I've seen in my life of seeing Australian things. It was the middle of summer, so she just kind of showed up, no shoes on or anything like that. Pulled back this piece of wood and was like, oh yeah, there's a snake in there, just reaches in, grabs it, pulls it out. He goes, oh, look at him. Must be a teenager. It's not full size. And she's holding this thing out for us to see. Just kind of pops it into a bag, and there you go. They are venomous. My mum was bitten by one when I was probably like 10 years old or something like that, and had to be taken to hospital. So that was a little bit scary, but they're by no means considered like a killer or anything like that. They're basically just kind of seen as a minor inconvenience. If they come into your house or onto your property, you probably don't want them around if you've got cats or birds or other small animals or small children. But at the same time, they eat a lot of vermin. They're just doing their thing. They're hanging out. We're encroaching on their territory that they've lived in for probably hundreds of millions of years now. So yeah, dugites, they're a thing over here. They're probably like one of the things that a lot of people watch and go, oh, in Australia they must be just swarming everywhere. I reckon I probably see 4 or 5 in a really busy year. Used to see a lot more as a kid, and it was a bit more of a like, hey, watch out for snakes. And I think I still have that hard coded into my brain. Anytime I go to the beach, it's like you got to walk over a bit of a shrub or something like that. Just make sure you make a lot of noise and they'll get out of your way. So they're pretty cool creatures. Snakes are awesome. I don't want to own one, but I've gone from someone who grew up with the fear of sharks and snakes instilled into you to just being like, well, you know what? They are all just part of what makes life on Earth kind of an amazing thing. My opinions on the best Superstrat ever made. As with any question like this, it totally depends on how you quantify best. I can tell you about a couple of my favorites though, and then I'll let you all weigh in the comments section below. I'm going to say, let's have a couple of categories in here. We'll go for like best designed and best executed with price not being an issue. Then we'll go for like the people's choice, the one that you could probably just buy off a wall anywhere. And then maybe like a slightly underrated one. So in the kind of high-end Superstrat category, for me, the one that I wanted forever growing up as a teenager, loving music from the 80s, when I saw these, I went, that's the Superstrat that I want. It's a Hamer Californian, and I was lucky enough to buy one actually the first year I went to the States. This is a Californian Elite. I bought it in Fort Worth in Texas. It was just hanging on the wall in a bit of a state of disrepair. Shout out to Tim at MT Guitars because they refretted this with stainless wire. There's something about the proportions on this. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, so probably not the best, but the body doesn't look too weird. It's not too big or too small. It's got 27 frets, which is total overkill. I never ever use them. Floyd, I've actually just unblocked this and it plays way better and it's got way more of a vibe. The boomerang inlays on ebony are awesome. I love the way ebony fretboards feel, and with stainless frets, it's pretty rad. They do the Hamer kind of 3-piece neck in there where they flip the grain on the middle piece. Nice big plane flying overhead at the moment. This is pretty awesome. I know it would have cost a lot of money back in the day. I got this for a really, really good deal, and I just feel like it's everything that I like about the Superstrat style thing. Humbucker, single coil, lots of frets, Floyd, refined without being too gaudy. Let's go for like the middle category now, like the people's choice, and there can only really be one for this. It's the RG550, and it has to be in desert yellow because that is the best color for an RG550. It's such an iconic look as a piece of industrial design from that era. It just kind of, to me, captures everything that era of guitar designs was about. I don't particularly love this Ibanez trem on there. I think I prefer the feel of a Floyd or a Schala licensed Floyd on there. But, this just does what it does so well. It's got such a sound. It plays a particular way. The wizard neck on it is, again, a thing. It's just a thing which is made up of a bunch of elements which in themselves are a thing. And it adds up to be even more of a thing. Got the neon DRs on here for all of that. But yeah, basically, like so many players from that era again played these, and they were relatively affordable until recently. Even the reissue ones are meant to be really good guitars. So yeah, the RG550, it's definitely in the conversation for the best Superstrat ever. The one that's closest to my heart though is this, which is a guitar that my dad built. Check out that kind of Ibanez style Tree of Life on there that he inlaid by hand. Everything was hand cut. This body, I think, is Poplar. It's just stained green, whatever. Damasio, Tone Zone, and Norton in here. I think it's an Air Norton from memory. I got these pickups for $50 secondhand because the little legs on them were kind of busted, but they work fine. Spertzl locking tuners on here. This is a guitar that he built to put a VG8 Roland GK pickup in, and then when I was a teenager I was like, hey, I want a dual humbucker Strat style guitar, can I just take this and put these pickups that I just bought in it? So yeah, the green's an awful color. I don't love it, but kind of reminds me of like the Steve Vai green meanie guitar on there. Played this live a bunch. It's just so comfortable. It has such a sound out of those Damasio pickups. Again, if I really just want to channel some Paul Gilbert or some Racer X, I'll probably grab this guitar, and the family connection to it obviously is a big one. So yeah, let me know, what's your favorite Superstrat? What one do you think would qualify as the best, either as like the kind of best features and build quality, or just like the best price to feature ratio? I'm very curious to hear, because I like the look of those newer Shavels that they're making. Obviously Jackson's in the conversation. You've got Robin guitars, you've got Valley Arts in there. I'd love to get a Valley Arts one day, and a bunch of other brands comparison in there that I see as well. So let me know what you're digging on the Superstrat front. One last one for this week. What is a good strategy to improve your lead playing if you are a self-taught player? I personally think book some lessons. Find your favorite guitar player on YouTube, email them, ask if they give lessons, give it a shot, book 1 or 2 lessons, and just see how you go. If you've got some experience playing guitar, and I've certainly had this with a lot of my students where people will book a one-off lesson. I've taught some people who are incredible players. They do stuff I could never dream about doing, but they've hit me up for a lesson because they just said, hey, I wouldn't just mind a couple of fresh ideas to practice. Like, give me 2 or 3 things that you think would be fun that maybe I haven't thought of. So I've done a lot of teaching like that. We're just kind of throwing out ideas to really advanced players, and they pick it up, and they're kind of happy with their little bit of, say, professional development or something like that. If you're somebody who plays pretty competently in general, but you want to really get your lead playing up to snuff, or just improve in general, grow, having that growth mindset instilled in you, I think it can be a great way. Just book some lessons, one player, various players, and treat it the way someone who, works a professional job would treat going to a seminar, or, doing some work training or something like that. Just approach it from the perspective of, you've got nothing to lose. You can hit somebody up, book them for an hour. If you get nothing out of it, well, you've helped support somebody who plays music for a living. And if you do get something out of it, then it's going to be a focused, condensed version of all the kind of noise that you would hear on YouTube from, the one lick that you absolutely need to master lead guitar. That's just not going to happen. That's not the way human beings work. Having an hour-long conversation with somebody, learning some licks, talking about the mindset behind how they think, maybe just getting that different perspective on playing can be an amazing thing to do. And if you're time poor, then even booking half-hour sessions like once a week and making it a thing where in that half hour you are fully committed to being engaged with that. Because I get that a lot of the time it's one or the other. Like, people may not have the money to fully invest in lessons, but they have a lot of time to practice, in which case find someone who will teach casually and then put in a lot of work on your own. And the other one where the money isn't an issue, but you don't really have the time. You're so time poor because of your other commitments. Having an environment where somebody's just going to push you a little bit for that hour or something can be a great way to do it. So that would be my advice anyway. And there are so many amazing players that are so accessible these days that it's almost kind of hard to go wrong. You've also got stuff like TrueFire, which I've never personally tried, but they have some amazing courses, and I have some friends who have made content for TrueFire, so it's probably pretty awesome. But again, the one-on-one human connection can be a little bit too hard to beat. So that is all for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's Q&A. Again, if you're in Melbourne, hopefully I'll see you on Friday. Check out the new Ragdoll single, and I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.